Welcome to my coding school. So let's get started with computer software and hardware. So in this video, we are going to look at things in a very simple way. So to start with, we shall go to the home screen and then let's get started. So here on my computer, this part of the screen that you are seeing is called the desktop. And then this part below down is called the taskbar. So here, these files that you see in yellow, for example, images, called folders, and books. These are all folders. And then these others, for example, MetaTrader 5, this is an application. And then Microsoft Edge is also an application. Then OBS is an app. So these are the files that I have on the desktop. So to start with, let's learn what a computer is. So here, I'll open up a folder with some simple images. And then I'll open up this. And then, so this is a desktop computer. So first of all, a computer is simply an electronic device that can take in data, process it, store it, and oftentimes output it. So here, let's take a look at the components of a computer. So the components of a computer are divided into the internal components and then the external components. So here in this image, what we have is a screen, we have a keyboard, we have a mouse, and then we have a central processing unit. So this unit has many components inside that we shall look at in a moment, but this is a basic computer setup. And then we can look at another image. So these are the external parts of a computer. So in this image, we have a keyboard, and then we have a monitor or a screen, and then we have a central unit, which is the brain of your computer. We have a mouse, and then we have the speakers. So most of the computers, for example, the computer I showed you earlier, the desktop, most of them do not have speakers. So you have to connect these external speakers to get the audio output. So now if we go on ahead, we can look at the applications of computer. So in this simple image, we have the applications for a computer. So first of all, computers are used in education, for example, to design the reports, to keep records. The computers will be able to do that task very well, but then they can be used in business applications. For example, to manage inventory, to communicate online, you use computers, and then scientific research. So you can use computers to make calculations and then to store scientific data, but then you can also use them in accounting. For example, if you use accounting software like QuickBooks, it runs on a computer, but then computers can also be used for personal things. For example, playing games is too. Playing games and working with documents, but then they can also be used for book publishing. For example, if you can work with the Microsoft Office, you will be able to make good books, but then they can also be used for medicine in hospitals to keep records, and then they're used in engineering, then communication, then banks also use computers for their services, and for entertainment, for example, watching videos on YouTube or on TikTok, you can use a computer. So these are the basic simple applications of a computer. So now let's go to the software. So here we are going to look at the software part and then the hardware part. So I've shown you the hardware so far, and then we have seen that computers have this kind of setup. So this is a computer. It has hardware and then it has software. And then software is simply a set of instructions that tell a computer or that give instructions to a computer. So among in software, we have the system software, and then we have the application software, and then we have the utility software. So let's see how we can break up this down. So system software, these are simply programs like the operating system. For example, here I'm using Windows. So this Windows program it helps the computer to communicate with the hardware. So here we have the operating system. So among the operating systems, we can have Windows, like this one that you see here. This is called Windows 11. We can have Linux, and then we can also have Ubuntu. And then we have application software. So application software, we have the general purpose software applications and then the specific ones. So for the general, we can have a software that's like the browser here. So here I have Firefox, which I can use to work with the internet. And then we have specific purpose application software. And then this one, we're going to leave it at that. And then we have to go to utility programs or utility software. These are simply applications that you work with a computer. For example, here, if I press Windows and X, I'll get to the device manager. So this application will tell me the devices that are available on my computer. But I'll see here the audio input and output, the audio processing objects, then Bluetooth, batteries, and etc. So this is a utility program, and then that one can be an antivirus program. So that's what we say, what we mean when we say utility software. And then we have a language processor. This simply assemblers, compilers, and interpreters. So if you have watched the videos on this channel, you will see that we have coding, and then we have device driver, the ones which I have shown you, and then the BIOS, which simply means the basic input or output systems. So that's it for the software. And then if we move on, in our images, we have 3D devices. So normally when you work with a computer, it will have somewhere to store the data. So this is a flash drive, and then this is a hard drive. This is an SSD card, and then these are RAM chips. So these RAM chips are the working memory of your computer. And then we can see yet another image. So now if you are switching on your computer, all you have to do is to look for a button that has this symbol, and then you can press it, and then the computer will power on. So it is located on different locations depending on the computer that you have. And then we have a keyboard. So this keyboard has a set of keys. For example, the F1 up to F12, these are called function keys, and they do different tasks depending on the application that's open. And then we have numeric keys. For example, 1, 0, and then we have the backspace, and then which is used to erase things. We have enter, and then we have a tab, caps lock, and the rest. And then on this side, we have the arrow keys down here, and then we have this other set of keys that are normally available on desktop computers. And then we have the numeric section of the keyboard. And then if we move on, let's look at the types of computers. So here, these are the computers. So we have a phone. A phone is a type of a computer because it does the things that we said in the definition of a computer. And then we have a tablet, which slightly has a bigger screen than the phone. And then on this side, we have an all-in-one computer. So what this basically does is, it has the CPU, and then